Recording now. I'm just going to take off the participants. Right, so good evening, everybody. My name is Ellie. I started Call to the Bar, and it was just mainly to be able to give students a bit of an insight, whether they're at university or even secondary school students have actually contacted, and also A-level students and things like that, because personally, when I went into university, I didn't even know the difference between a solicitor and a barrister. So I just thought that it would be a good platform for everybody to get to know some barristers. It is obviously specifically a crime. It's all about the criminal bar, but I think it's a good way for everybody to connect. I'm sure Louis won't mind if you drop him a LinkedIn follow or a connection, and I think it's just a nice way for you guys to network as well, and for us all to network and get to know each other. So tonight we've got the amazing Louis Adams, who is a future pupil barrister at Six Pump Court, which is quite a big chambers in, very big chambers in London. And Louis actually managed to get 3 offers on his first ever round. Now, that just astounds me amongst many other things. So, Louis, if you just want to say hello to everybody.
Yeah, hello. As Ellie's very kindly said, my name's Louis, and I start pupillage in October at Six Pump Court, a criminal pupillage. The Chambers is based in London, but the pupillage is down in the southeast. And hopefully I can share some of the things that help me get to where I am with you guys throughout the podcast. And of course, feel free to drop me a follow on LinkedIn. And also feel free to ask any questions you want in the chat as we're going through. Very happy to answer questions. As Ellie said, it's a criminal-based podcast, but I did apply for 11 common law sets. So if you have more generalized questions, I'm happy to answer anything like that as well.
Thanks, Louis. And also, Louis, can you just explain about Louis and the law? What is that all about, and what's the purpose of that? Can we follow it, and how do we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I also run a TikTok page called Louis and the Law. It provides all kind of sort of legal updates. So I do some sort of summarized video on current legal things in the news, try and break them down into sort of simple lay terms so that people can understand them, as well as some more sort of pupillage and barrister aimed videos. So you can go and follow that on TikTok and sort of stay up to date with all of that stuff, which hopefully will help you if any of you are preparing for your pupillage interviews, or if you're just interested in trying to find out a bit more about what being a barrister is about. Hopefully that sort of sheds some light on that.
Yeah, and of course you are a barrister training course graduate as well, aren't you, from the University of Law, if I'm correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, tonight, guys, if you've got any questions about the bar course or university, I'm sure we won't mind to give some talk about university procedure as well. And also what was quite interesting is, which we'll get into this later on in the session, but Louis went straight into a job from school, was that correct? Or was it from college?
Yeah, no, so from school. So did you want me to just give a little bit about
Yeah,
the sort of
please
journey?
tell
Yeah.
me. Yeah, so Louis seen the dollar signs and ran straight into the job sign. He's like, "Bye, guys, I'm not doing education."
Yeah. Yeah, so my path to the bar is a little bit unusual compared to the standard barrister. So I did my GCSEs, and sort of towards my end of my GCSEs, I was getting quite disenfranchised with the education system over here. And I was going to school, but not a lot. I got okay GCSEs, and then I got well enough to get back into my sixth form. I went into sixth form on the first day, and it wasn't for me. I absolutely hated it. So I decided to leave sixth form on the first day with my mum's backing that if I got a job within 2 weeks, she'd support me. And I got a job within 3 days. And the job happened to be at a local criminal law firm. And I worked there as a receptionist, so nothing to do with the legal things, but I was able to get my foot in the door, have a look. It just seemed like something that would be interesting and was out there, so I went for it. And then once I started working there, I really fell in love with working in the criminal justice system in England and Wales. I got exposure to so many interesting people. I got exposure to the barristers, to the solicitors, to the whole system. And then sort of within 3 months of working as a receptionist there, I was allowed to sort of oversee the Crown Court clients. And I was sort of trained to be a Crown Court paralegal. And alongside that, while I was working, I enrolled with the Open University to get my entry qualification to do the LLB. So I did a certificate of higher education course at the Open University, which I funded through my paychecks from my job. And then I used that that certificate of higher education to get into an LLB course at the University of Law. That's where I did my undergraduate degree. I did that online whilst working. I didn't work the entirety of the degree, but I did work for the large majority of it. Then once I finished my degree, I applied and I did the bar course. The bar course was funded by a Lincoln's Inn scholarship, which I was fortunate enough to receive. And then I've recently completed the bar course and been offered pupillage, which starts October 2025.
Well, I think that's really interesting as well, because I think that sometimes within this profession, and again, I'm really early in my legal career, very, very, very early in it. I'm still a baby with it all. But I do think, and the one thing I'll say and stand by is 100% connections. You know, it's important to build on connections and to speak to people, get to understand their experience, how they started, and understand that there are so many different routes as well. Now it's becoming a lot more modern and a lot more flexible than what it used to be once, perhaps maybe, you know, 20 years ago, there was only one route. I think actually before there was only one provider ever. I think it was the Inns Court College of Advocacy.
Exactly, yeah.
And that,
I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say you're absolutely right. I mean, in terms of routes to the bar, like mine, I hope at least shows that even if you don't know what you want to do at school level, and sort of it doesn't really matter what your starting point is, if you've got your eyes set on that end point, there is a way. I mean, a barrister is a very highly qualified profession, and when I started, I was very lowly qualified. I didn't have any A levels. I was kind of a bit lost. So it sort of goes to show where you can go.
And it goes to show that you don't have to do the traditional route all the time, neither. Sometimes the traditional route doesn't suit people. For me, the traditional route would suit me, because if you give me a bit of flexibility, I'm like running up the walls, to be honest. I've got no chill whatsoever. I went into college and just thought, this is fantastic. I've got a lanyard and go out for lunch whenever I want. I didn't really understand anything about the lessons. I just was never there. But yeah, for me, I do need the structure. But for many other people, they can really self-delegate themselves, and that they can delegate their own time. I can't do that. But yeah, I think it's so refreshing to hear that you started off as a low level and you climbed the ladder up, and that's also a way to become a paralegal. You know, so many people say, oh, get a paralegal job, and it's like, well, how do you get this job? You know, how do we go about getting that? Because so many people apply for paralegal jobs and don't manage to get them neither.
100%, yeah. So I mean, even if you work in that environment and you can prove yourself time and time again, then that is another route in. And as well, the benefit of doing that, or when you're working in a legal firm, like you say, is those legal connections. Now that I'm going to be practicing in Kent, I've got those legal connections with all of the solicitors in Kent. So it's going to make being instructed far more accessible and easy for me, because they're going to remember my name, they're going to remember who I am, they're going to remember what I did for them, hopefully anyway. But those connections are really important. Yeah.
So always remember, guys, clerks, receptionists, you know, they're not just the PA people.
100%.
They could be on the ladder to becoming the best barrister in the UK.
Absolutely.
Stay humble, everybody. No, I'm joking. But no, it actually is going to pull into a theme that Louis and I are going to talk about later on in the session, about court clerks. I'm not sure if people know what those are, and chambers clerks and receptionists and things like that. We were just discussing, Louis and I, before everybody joined on, about how judges, as a couple of judges that I've spoken to this week, circuit judges, have said that the most irritating thing for them is people who are snobby, you know, barristers who are snobby and have no respect for solicitors and court staff. Whether you think they're this small down the chain, they're not. It all ties in together. And at the moment, I'm working as a court clerk, and it's really funny to see the back scenes as well, to what goes in and stuff. It's not just a simple, straightforward case. There's so many people working. It's kind of like a hive of bees. So it's interesting, as Louis just said there. He started off as a receptionist, and he has now been the future pupil barrister who got three pupillage offers. I think I'm going to continue saying that for the rest of my life. I don't even think you're as happy as I am.
Don't worry, I spent a few months saying it until everyone started getting sick of me. So
yeah. So the thing that I found about you, Louis, is I thought you were incredibly confident with your criminal law. So I've followed Louis and the Law on the TikTok pages, and for me, sentencing. So you've done the Axel Rudiger sentencing breakdown. You did the Lucy Letby one. I'm sure you did the Lucy Letby one. And I know you've just done a famous MP. I can't remember his name. Do you remind me?
Mike Amesbury.
Yes. So Louis is picking the high profile cases for us, and he's breaking down exactly what those sentencing decisions mean. Sorry, I couldn't get my words out then. So of course everybody knows when the media post a huge high profile murder, they just say that the person has been sentenced to X, Y, and Z amount of years. But I personally as well struggle to understand why they've gotten that amount of years, why they've got that sentence and passed. So Louis broke down exactly what the reasoning is behind that. And I think you are incredibly confident with your criminal law, and you've got the ability to make really complex things very simple. So you break it down into complete layman's terms, and also incredibly approachable. So I met Louis just by messaging you on TikTok, and yeah, you're just really relatable person. So I just want to ask you, how do you think that you gained those skills, and how do you, firstly, question one is how did you gain those skills, and two,
Yeah.
how are you going to maintain those skills as a criminal barrister?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, first things first, in terms of breaking things down and making them simple, um, I mean, I play rugby locally. I'm involved in a lot of local groups with loads of different kinds of people, and you have to adjust what you're saying to the audience which you're saying it to. Obviously, I also worked at a criminal law firm. I've worked in the court of protection. I've worked with such a wide range of people that I've sort of learned how to address the audience. You can't use big, complicated words with certain audiences. You need to adapt and you need to explain things. And what I've actually found is even on the bar course in advocacy, you don't need to use complicated language. In fact, the simple language is more compelling. It makes judges understand what you're trying to tell them more, and you cut through to your clients quicker as well. So I feel like using simple language in law is actually of great benefit rather than just, fanning off a string of pretentious words. So that's something I've sort of picked up from my social circles and my work experience. Sorry, what was the second part of the question? I've completely forgot.
Well, actually, I've got another one from there as well. So
Yeah,
of course it can't, well, the second question was, how will you maintain that as a criminal barrister?
yeah,
How mindful will you be to maintain those qualities as a criminal barrister? And that kind of tied into another question, which is clearly the importance of being relatable to your clients is probably one of the most significant parts of the job. I would say, by what you've just said there, becoming relatable to your clients is
mhm.
imperative. So would you agree? Or
Yeah, 100%. One person who had a very profound impact on me. I worked on a fixed term contract for a court protection firm just before I started the bar course, and my boss there, Honorary KC, Nicola McIntosh, amazing woman. Um, and she was like, Louis, we're so happy for you. This is great, but don't let it change you. Don't let it change who you are. And I think that's so important. You need to stay true to yourself when you're doing it. In the words of Elwood, and
mm.
you just can't be full of yourself when you're doing it. It's so important to just remember who you're speaking to, and that communication doesn't need to be complicated. It can be very simple, and simple words used effectively are so much better than a string of jargon.
And some of these cases, and so probably all of these cases, well, inevitably, all of the cases will have had an impact on somewhere down the line. The defendant will be the person who's been accused of the crime, will be going through an awful amount of stress, and of course wanting to tell their side of the story. Like I say, if you say you're not guilty, you want somebody to be in your corner and completely
Mm,
backing you until the end. Doesn't matter what you think of the crime that's been alleged. Of course you have to switch off on that. And similarly, there'll be witnesses in there and victims in there that, it's a crime and a trial has a string of an impact on many people. And I guess if you're not relatable to those people, how can you ever build trust with them? How
100%. Yeah.
can you have that appropriate level of dialect with them when they're going through such what would obviously be a life-changing
Mm.
situation? Because
It's that rapport, isn't it? You need
yeah,
to build that rapport. Otherwise, how are they going to divulge the information to them? You need to properly do your job. Like, building rapport is so important. 100%
yeah.
agree with you.
And as a Crown Court paralegal, did you ever see any crime cases that really moved you? Ever any crime trials that, or any cases just in generic that
I
really
think
did?
it I think it'd be harder to find one that doesn't.
Mm,
The work is so like deep ingrained. I mean, obviously anything that's sort of like under the Sexual Offences Act 2003 is really difficult. Whether you're prosecuting or defending, you're dealing with victims of really awful things, or people who have been accused of really awful things having not done them. So yeah, any case like that is certainly difficult. It'd be hard to pinpoint one specific case, but yeah, that's certainly a role that makes you grow up really, really quickly. Bearing in mind, I was doing this when I was about 17 years old. Then when I turned 18, I visited my first prison. So I sort of in the end stages of adolescence sort of grew up around it, and that really made me mature very quickly as a person, which I enjoyed.
And when you visit those prisons and you've got that convicted person telling you that they are still, you know, completely and utterly, sorry, that would be appeal. That would be post trial. So that would be appeal. Sorry, I'm getting confused there. That was the work I did.
That's okay.
Sorry, when you go and visit the prisons to do a conference, a legal conference with the defendant, and you've got them telling you that they have not done the crime and you have to walk away from the cells, how did that make you feel? Did you ever feel personally attached to the case, not in a way that would hinder your perspective on the case or your the way you'd act on the case, but did you ever feel really awful for leaving, for walking away and thinking, wow, you know?
I mean, 100%. I mean, the most difficult in that regard are the sort of modern slavery cases, where there's the modern slavery defense and there's people who've been trafficked over and they're sort of on hold waiting so we can plead this very specific defense under the Modern Slavery Act. And you know, they're at no fault. You know, they've been brought to a country where there's normally not their primary language, and then they're normally extorted, happen to commit a crime, and they're sort of left here. So yeah, those cases were particularly hard to leave. Obviously, there's some where people have obviously done it on the evidence and they're telling you that they haven't done it, which raises a whole nother set of issues. But no, they're the really hard ones.
Yeah, of course. And just out of curiosity, could anybody put a hand up if they actually want to do crime specifically, if that's the route that they want to go down at the moment? Whether it be solicitor, barrister, just is crime what everybody is generically interested in? I don't know if you can put the little hand up emojis or. Oh, yeah, we've got one there, a thumbs up. That's the one, thumbs up, hands up, sorry. Yeah, of course, you, Louis. Anybody else? Crime or family? Well, I'm a family court clerk, actually, so that is quite interesting. I find family cases, believe it or not, more distressing than crime. Yeah, everybody wants to do that.
I feel the same way about family law.
I'll be honest, I was in a case the other day and I honestly really welled up. It was completely inappropriate because I've never ever done that in court before. But you know, the judge was totally. I didn't cry in court. Let me just say that, guys. But I really did well up, and I got a real lump in my throat. My eyes filled up and had to turn around because I felt absolutely distraught for this mother. You know, I felt really, really, really upset. And the judge said it's completely normal. Whereas for me, I can sit through a murder trial and not that I can't be phased, that's a wrong attitude, but it would make me tear up. But I think because family is so personal, you've got a mother and a father usually in the case, and it's concerning the child. I think it really did upset me. So yeah, exactly. I got the shock of my life. So let's talk about now your education. You did your GCSEs, you did your higher education certificate, you said that, then you did your job as the receptionist, worked up to the paralegal, so we've got all of that. What did you find secondary school like, by the way? Were you very into, I'm assuming, rugby, so you're into PE side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I was into rugby. I was always sort of the quiet kid where at parents' evening they were like, "Oh, I just wish he would talk more," or you know, that kind of thing. But towards the end of school, you know, I stopped like attending lessons. I would just like rebel and be like, "No, I'd rather just like go and do this."
Yeah.
I ended up with fine GCSEs because I did study, but I was completely disenfranchised with the system. Like, I just wanted to do something. I didn't want to learn about sort of like 8 or 10 random subjects. I wanted to do something practical, whatever that was, whether it was to start a business, whether it was going to law, whether it was to, you know, do whatever. I wanted to actually be doing something practical, something I felt was meaningful. And after I picked my A levels, I already was like, I'm not sure about this. And then I went for the first day, and I was just like, Mum, this isn't for me. No.
So your experience as the paralegal, can you say 3 things that you learned about the criminal justice system, whether it be through the defence eyes or the prosecution?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing I'd say is that either prosecution, defence, court, everyone is sort of a cog in the administration of justice system. Like everyone's kind of working together. It sounds really strange because you think prosecution and defence, they're across from each other, but that's really not it, because they're testing the case to see whether it meets a certain standard, and if it does, there's a conviction. If it doesn't, there isn't. That's the very simple level of it. But everyone's working together to prepare the cases, to get the defendant ready, to get the witnesses ready. It's all like a massive team thing, trying to achieve a fairly similar goal. You got to also think about, most barristers don't just defend or don't just prosecute. Most barristers do a mix of defence and prosecution work, and then you've got an impartial judge who was probably a barrister before that. So it's all one massive team, which is a really weird way to think about it, but it also sort of adds to the credence. Why do people get the right to be defended by someone? So I'd say one thing is that they work as a massive team, which is a bit of a strange realization. The second thing I'd say is the widespread sort of misconceptions the general public have about the criminal justice system. I certainly deal with this on my TikTok when I make a sentencing video, and you get people saying, "Oh, one rule for them, one rule for the other," or things like that. Certainly, all the high-profile people I cover, I get people saying, "Oh, they should go away for life for that," when in reality, if they'd committed the offence, they'd be on a community order. So seeing it up close and personal sort of shone a light on what's actually going on. And I suppose linking to that, the third thing is just how critically underfunded the whole system is, particularly the publicly funded work. I mean, it's really sad. Certainly the courts in Kent are in a complete dire state, and they shouldn't be, really. Cases are taking, almost years. I think the waiting list for certain offences is literally years until trial. And when you...
Oh, sorry, just
go on.
touching on that, I actually think that there's a barrister called Mark Robinson, guys on LinkedIn. He's a really fantastic barrister.
Yeah, I've seen him.
Garden Court Chambers, really cool guy. Fun fact, was actually DJ beforehand for 10 years. And anyways, he's a fantastic barrister, and he actually appealed one. I'm sure he appealed one of his clients. He got leave to appeal. He got permission to appeal it because it was something like the trial was listed for 4 years, in 4 years' time, something absolutely scandalous. So this guy, just for anybody who's not familiar with that type of process, he's been alleged to have committed the crime. He's been arrested. He's been remanded, he's kept in prison until his trial date, and they've set the trial date for 4 years' time. So if this guy gets not guilty by the jury, the chap's been in prison for 5 years anyway. And Mark Robinson, this barrister, actually got leave to appeal, permission to appeal the time limit on it, because it was just the time frame. Sorry, because it was appalling. So that's so interesting that you just said that as well, Louis.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only is it the length of the period that people are being remanded for, but it's the quality of the evidence of the witnesses. People will know that your memory's not as good as you think it is. No one's memory is. And let's say you get a trial within 3 months from the crime, your memory will already be quite affected, and you will have already rewired a lot of what you've seen. Take that and go for 2, 3, 4 years, then all of a sudden the witnesses are completely unreliable. And of course, in bar school, we're taught to break that down piece by piece, and then you just have trials going all over the place. So yeah, it's a massive problem, having that massive time delay between arrest and trial. Yeah,
it is a real shame, because it's a system that will have to always be around forever. So it should be taken a lot more care of. But this is 100%. The problem with the government and the politics, and I'm not going to talk too much about that because I don't know.
No, of course, yeah. That's when I get into well, I don't get into debates because I don't debate people in my comments, but I want to. But
I know. Well, I like to just say a few things, and then I don't even realise what I'm talking about half the time, so I just stop. Not politics, not my thing. So
I'm sure that's not true. Yeah.
No, not seriously. What was the benefit personally to you, like to you only, not physically to you, but to you only, that you reaped from having this experience as a paralegal, that you then was able to feel that you could apply to your pupillage applications and to a career at the bar?
Yeah, I mean, I was initially going to say I went in as a teenager and came out as a man, but I actually did in terms of my age, so that's probably a bad thing to say. But
no, that's a really interesting thing to say, because what you said about how it completely matured you.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to build on, and I just think that if you take a role like that in a local criminal law firm and you get the opportunity to interact with clients, see the evidence, see the courtroom, it gives you so much character development and so much confidence in what you're doing that you can really take that everywhere. I mean, certainly in more recent times, I'm still using the experience I got when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, when I'm sort of 22 now. I'm still using that same experience in my applications. I'm still using it in my interviews. And yeah, I mean, that series of gaining competence at something, i.e. the criminal law field, gives you confidence. Competence translates to confidence, is something I've always found. So
Mm.
I think that real life work experience does give you that confidence in interviews to present yourself and, really stand out from the other candidates.
And also, when you talk about how you are still using that experience from 16, 17, 18, do you mean that real life connection that you had with the clients? How many of us read these court cases in the newspaper and think, oh my goodness, what are they going through? So for you too, and you'd actually be surprised, a lot of the cases that come through are actually published, even if they're a smaller case than another huge murder, they're still 9 times out of 10 put in the newspaper. So did you mean kind of that interaction with the person, seeing what they're going through, seeing the process from start to finish, understanding the language, the submissions, the type of defences that barristers and solicitors may use? Is that the type of experience you're referring to there?
Yeah, 100%. So like on the one hand, when you see people, in the news getting sentenced or whatever, you're sort of seeing an entity, you're seeing the crime and you're seeing the sentence. When you meet the person, you're seeing the person, and that's a very, very different experience. You'd be shocked at when you see the crime, and you'll be shocked when you meet the person. They might be funny, they might be warm. It's really, really peculiar. So it's having that experience certainly emotionally matured me to some degree.
Mm.
So I say that the emotional maturity side, which is really important in crime, because you're dealing with really sensitive, really sad, taboo, all of that kind of thing, all of those kind of topics. The second thing, though, I'd say is just being in the workplace as opposed to studying was really beneficial to me, because I learned those transferable skills. And I think you learn them in most jobs, but particularly having the opportunity to do that Crown Court sort of casework really early on, I feel like that gave me a lot of transferable skill to what I'm sort of heading towards now. So I'd say there's the emotional maturity side of it, and just like the actual practical legal skills you pick up working at sort of any legal establishment.
And also probably a little bit of, correct me if I'm wrong, a bit of a sharp reality in terms of how the fact that, again, you see these cases in the newspaper, you don't actually realise that so many cases happen so close to your hometown. That will probably be extremely worrying. That might be kept on the lower radar for the time being to stop general public having an absolute panic attack. And some of the, probably, was it a little bit of a shock to reality to see how frequent some of those crimes are?
I mean, yeah. The thing about the news is that they report on things that are obviously going to do well when they're reported. I
Yeah.
studied criminology as a part of my undergraduate degree, and yeah, it basically all confirmed what I'd originally thought. The reality is that most crimes you don't hear about, and the ones that you do hear about are the super, super scary ones.
Thank you very much for that. So what next question is, what made you want to become a barrister, in a couple of sentences, if you had to pick one thing? So at
Yeah,
school you were a little bit dysregulated and you're carrying on and trying to just live life. And
yeah.
what made you just think, okay, do you know what, I want to become a barrister?
Yeah, so there's a few things to this question, and certainly if I was being asked it in a pupillage interview, I would have prepared a completely different answer. But for the sake of being genuine and transparent, there's a few things. The first thing is I had quite a big tragedy when I was younger. My dad passed away when I was 12. I found his body. It was quite a traumatic experience. And for a few years after that, I'd really, really struggled, especially in school with making friends and things like that. So I felt very alone, and that sort of feeling of not having a voice. So I suppose there's sort of an element of wanting to give a voice to people who don't have one. So that's certainly an important backbone to my sort of why do I want to become a barrister story. The second thing that I would say is that my family had a massive legal struggle as well after my dad passed away. NatWest were essentially trying to force an order for sale on our house because of a contested life insurance policy. Anyway, I was exposed to sort of the legal sphere and just how harsh it can be quite early on. So that had a
Mm.
really profound impact. And I sort of saw the way that my brothers and my mother were trying to fight the claim without a lot of knowledge, using an online legal form called Legal Beagles or Beagle Legals, something like that. Um, So that had quite a profound impact, and I could see the way that law could actually interact with real life. Like law itself, like I don't have like a love for the letter of the law. Like it's cool finding a technicality or whatever, but I have a love for the way that law interacts with the world and the actual real world consequence and the real world effect of it. And finally, I once I did start working in crime, I've always had a brief like sort of, I see it on the news, I read it, like it's interesting, I watch a documentary. But when I actually worked in it, saw it firsthand, met the people, I knew that it's something I wanted to spend a lot of time in my life doing. So, and I also saw the solicitor side of things, and it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I did want to be in that courtroom, and I did sort of want to give that voice quite literally to the people who I thought often didn't have it.
You just took me to the next question, and it was, did you always know that you wanted to be a barrister? So everybody, just again out of curiosity, I apologise for the questions, but does everybody want to be a barrister, or are some people here wanting to go down the solicitor route, or any other routes? Yes, 100%. So we've got barrister, 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 barrister. Barrister's where it at, is where it's at, isn't it? Barrister. Yeah, so everybody wants to be a barrister. And is it because you want to be a barrister, or is it because you want the wig and the gown? Like, no judgment at all. Barrister, yeah, both. Oh, both. Interesting. Barrister, although trying to get through the BTC. I'm sure Louis can relate to that. I can't yet, so don't put me off too much, Jessica, because I might have to pull out last minute of the course. Right, so so you always knew you wanted to be a barrister, in that
Well, I just tag on that I didn't always know I wanted to become a barrister. Like obviously there's all of this giving the voice thing and etc. But what I wanted to be at school was a paramedic or an anaesthetist, which is quite two very specific things. But I was very interested in medicine. I still am very interested in medicine, and maybe one day I might be doing something like medical negligence. Who knows?
Well,
I'm certainly very interested in those things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess paramedic is also in a funny roundabout way giving a voice to the people, because you're saving people and you're making sure that
100%.
they are they're protected. You are their voice, you're their savior. So it's very similar. I can see that in a way to being a barrister, actually.
And I like a uniform.
Yeah, I think
I like a uniform.
you know, I mean, let's just talk about it. Have you got your wig and your gown? And I'm dying to ask that question.
I do, yeah.
Do you try it on a mirror? Just be honest.
I do sometimes put the cape. I call it a cape. Why not? It is a cape. I sometimes put the cape on just because why not? But not often, no, because I don't want to have to pay to get it dry cleaned, because it's bloody expensive. And
I know it's such a shame, isn't it, for like Halloween, for example? It would just be wholly inappropriate, wouldn't it, for you to dress up as a barrister on Halloween? Because I think probably get barred for that. I mean,
well, I had a moment the other week where I was invited to a social event that was dress as your job, and I was like, should I go all in? You know, wig, gown. I didn't.
No, I know, it's that's the tricky thing, isn't it? I mean, I think I would probably love to walk down the street in a wig and a gown and not going to lie, but we're not in the 1825 anymore in 2000.
No.
What a shame, guys. So so handful of a couple of things that you like about oral advocacy.
Yeah.
And guys, it's quite interesting for you to make notes on this as well if it correlates to you, because this will be quite good to mention in interviews and things. So listen out to what
I mean, there's so many different things. Certainly on the bar course, I fell in love with cross-examination and examination in chief. I mean, because you come into the bar course thinking, oh wow, you know, it's so cool on TV, it must be easy, and then you start doing it and you realize you're actually pathetic. You're so pathetically bad at not leading or leading, and leading them the wrong way, and then asking a leading question when it should be a non-leading, and just something about mastering that art bit by bit. And you know, barristers spend 30-40 years, you keep learning. No one ever really masters it, but even just witnessing some of my tutors on the course who were or are still very successful practicing barristers, I was just like, wow, I want to do that. That is like the coolest thing I've ever seen. So there's certainly an element of just like the actual practice of examination in chief and cross-examination that I really, really wanted to perfect. I think the second answer I'd normally give, which is true, is that as a very introverted person, I find it a good way to express myself in a more extroverted way. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but I can struggle in social situations where there's sort of 10, 20, 30 people around me, like the kind of networking events which are common in law and at the end. But in court, I find that I can be that loudspeaker. I can speak clearly. I can say what I want to say. So it almost feels like a way to express myself that I haven't sort of had. Really, really strange thing, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's like kind of like your own platform, isn't it, really? And
Yeah,
as well, I don't know about everybody else, but I think if you've got a real passion, I don't think there's anything better than actually orally advocating your passion, speaking about your passion. I find it incredibly difficult sometimes to write down all the things I like about my passion, because I just think, oh, after one or two things, I find it difficult. I don't know about anybody else, but to sit and really pull things apart in my head, I'd like to pull things apart verbally. So when it comes to doing written applications, I'm sat thinking like, oh, you have to spend hours and hours and days and weeks on these applications. And I just end up thinking you. But the one thing I must agree, and do you agree, Louis, especially when it comes to the pupillage, I haven't gone for pupillage, by the way, but I'm just saying in normal jobs and things, that proofreading weeks down the line is incredibly helpful. The shock that you get from
yeah.
looking back and thinking, what was my first draft? But that was me for many pupillages. I'm not at the pupillage point yet, guys. I've still got a few ladders to climb. So let's move on to the dreaded word about pupillage. Does everybody know about what pupillage is? I'm assuming you will, but I'm just, because I actually didn't know what it was in my second year, so I'm just trying to make sure that we're not jumping into anything that people don't understand. Yeah, I'm sure everybody knows. Cool. So pupillage, your interview, so your application, your interview process, what was harder in your opinion? Or was it both actually the same?
What out of applications and interviews?
Yeah, so the paper sifting and then going into the interview, what did you think was
Oh, the interviews are way harder.
really?
Yeah.
That's devastating.
Actually, the thing is, it depends on the set, right? Some sets, certainly the London ones that get 400, 500 applicants, can actually interview quite a lot of those applicants. So some sets will interview like 25% of their applicants, which could be 100 people. So your odds of getting to the interview stage are actually pretty good. Other sets invite very few people to interview, so that could be the hardest thing in that particular set, if that makes sense. So it varies, but I'd say in terms of like actual difficulty, interviews are tough. I certainly had enough suffering through them, enough sort of going over in my head everything that I'd said in the interview again and again. So yeah, interviews are tough, but they can be cracked, and there's certainly an art to it, 100%.
And for everybody wanting to become a barrister, if becoming a barrister, if the funding side of it worries you, because it certainly worries me, you have got the Inns of Courts scholarships. So, for example, Inner Temple, Middle, Lincoln's Inn, and Gray's Inn, they all do scholarship rounds. That's just a really helpful thing for you guys to keep in mind. I believe that for most of them, the application for the paper sift opens in October through to November. And I think the interviews go in about February, March, April time, one of those things. I will have to get that checked out. But yeah, that's a really helpful thing to make a note of in case the funding worries people. Because let's face it, it's incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And sometimes that funding is a huge barrier for people to come to the bar. And I think that's a real shame, because you've got some real talent superstars out there, most likely, that will just think, I can't do this because it's far too expensive. But the reason I'm asking that question is because for the pupillage interviews, you are a Lord Denning Scholar from Lincoln's Inn. And you mentioned that's what helped fund the bar course for you. Did you see any similarities between the scholarship process and the interview process for pupillage applications?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely similarity. I mean, certainly at Lincoln's, there's a paper round, and then there's an interview, which is fairly legal based. I mean, pupillage interviews are harder than the scholarship interviews because you're a bit further along. But yeah, without the Inn of Court scholarship, I mean, I certainly wouldn't have been able to study the course as soon, because I would have had to save up for it. So I'm certainly very grateful for it, and I know there's hundreds of other people who are as well. Just also on the funding side of things,
Yes.
if you are doing the bar course, a very easy way to get an extra £11,500 is if you take the combined masters. I didn't think it added that much to the time commitment of the course. I did the pro bono, which actually helped me a ton in getting pupillage and made me decide that I never want to set foot in a family court ever again. But
Yeah.
that's a good way to do it. As long as it's your first master's level degree, master's level qualification, then you will be able to get that additional government funding.
And may I just add on that as well, guys? I don't know what stage you were all at, but if you have or haven't done dissertations, I have done my dissertation and I absolutely despised every living moment of it. I did my dissertation actually 4 hours before it was due. It was appalling. I don't know how I managed to get a 2-1 on it. I was really, really disrespectful to the education process doing that. But I just couldn't stand it. Like I say, it's just not my thing. So in terms of the LLM, and we will answer the questions in the chat box at the end, by the way. In terms of the LLM, you can actually do it. At a couple of providers, I know Northumbria definitely do it, and I think you will all do it as well. Rather than choosing a written dissertation for your masters, you can do a pro bono law clinic, so you can work on real client cases, and I think that's just a real useful thing to keep in mind, because then you can take some form of real experience to pupillage applications with you.
Yeah, I was just going to really touch on it briefly, because I think it did make a huge impact on my pupillage applications. Is that
Right.
I did family pro bono as a part of my LLM, and I had the opportunity to, I think I did 3 cases, and all of them I appeared in court on my own with the client. So
Wow.
that courtroom experience, because they can do it, you're basically like a solicitor's agent in a sense. They've got a special agreement with the court, and you can speak on their behalf professionally. I did a CVP hearing and 2 in-person hearings at East London Family Court, and that experience was humongous. One of them was a final hearing as well, where there's a final order being made. So I did all the final submissions on that. That, like, for pupillage interviews, absolute gold dust. And the actual workload it added to the bar course, I didn't think was that bad. You just have to do a critical reflective report, which is about 4,000 words, but it was more like a story.
Yeah.
It
It's
wasn't
kind of like
very
diary entry,
easy.
isn't it? It's like reflecting on a diet and on an experience.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And if you keep on top of that as well, guys, if you just like logging what you're doing each week, I'm assuming when it comes to the end of doing that critical reflection, it'll be quite easy.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
So also in your application, so the reason I say this is because somebody I know who's gone for pupillage this round and has got interviews actually said for every pupillage offer that she gets, she will do a skydive, and apparently it's made quite a lot of the barristers laugh. Now, I'm not saying for anybody to put in their pupillage application do a skydive. I'm not saying that, and I don't think she will do a skydive. But I think she was also going to say that for every pupillage interview that she got, she was going to buy a new pet stingray, which are £500 per piece, by the way. And I don't know how on earth she's managed to get these stingrays. I don't want to know neither. But would you say that you said anything funny and witty in your applications and interviews? I know you're not going to say that you said you were going to get a pet stingray, but is there anything that you said?
I wish I had. That's fantastic.
I know
what a great line.
She's got 2. We were going to call it Beyonce, like for Beyonce, and then I think the other one was going to call it Razy, like, you know, so it's got like the
well, first of all, I'm really glad I didn't agree to do a skydive per pupillage offer, because I'm not even going to do 1, let alone 3. In terms of the wittiness, I mean, in one of my interviews, I said something, you know, somewhat funny about something I heard on a podcast from a comedian that ended up being actually quite insightful. But it's hard to recall certain specific things that I said in any of the interviews. They're probably quite trauma blocked. But I'd say just my general tone is as it is now. Like I didn't adopt a super duper serious legal tone. I was very much as I am now. Just try to. There's no point putting on a voice. No point trying to put on an accent or anything. Just you know, present as you are. Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
absolutely. And you've got to think that these people, you know, if it's a training contract or if it's pupillage, they're going to work around you, and they'll soon find out, you know, what you're all about in the ring around.
Exactly. Yeah, so they don't want a law book. They want someone they can also, you know, hang out with, like, in some extent, like not as casual as that, obviously, but they're working with you. You know, the same way you have job workers, job besties, so to speak. So you know, they want someone they can work with.
Yeah, I have a few job besties, and I find it hard sometimes to delegate my time because I'm a really wanted person around the job office. No, I'm joking. But I said in my mini pupillage, when I did a breakdown the other day, I said that, you know, sell yourself in your applications, talk about your good skills and what you bring to the table, not in intelligence, but just you as a person. You know, are you kind? Are you easy to get along with? Are you receptive? You know, I should have put in mine I'm hilarious, but I didn't, because I didn't want to like overstep the mark too early. But I will be saying that in my positively manifested pupillage interviews. But yeah, just be like, you know, talk about yourself and just be proud of who you are as well. And
Yeah.
I think that's really nice that you said that, actually, Lou, that you just didn't change yourself, and I mean, you still are, even though you are the holder of 3 offers on your first ever round, you are still as humble as they come. So that's really, it's testament to show what people
You should. I'm glad you didn't speak to me of May last year, but it's worn down. Yeah.
Were you swanning around like you were like top dog or something?
There was about a week, but I think that's acceptable after 6 years of effort.
Oh,
So
100%. Were you walking around with the wig on, with the attitude, or did you leave the wig
I
in?
mean, I didn't buy the wig that quickly.
Oh, right. I
So,
think I'm
but
gonna buy the wig in advance, because I think that's manifestation, people. What do you all think? I don't
cool,
know.
send it. It's about £600. So
Yeah, I know. I'll have to put it on like a credit card or something. Right. So, what was the interview atmosphere like in the room? So, I know that in the scholarship interviews, I had a High Court judge, a King's Counsel barrister, and a junior barrister, and I felt completely and utterly intimidated. Like, I was shaking like a hairless cat. I was so nervous to walk in. And what did you find? Did you find that in the pupillage interviews they are a little bit more receptive, if that makes sense, to try and ease the tone, or are they very straight faced?
So I'll make a bit of a generalization here. I did interviews at London sets, and I did interviews at sets outside of London on the circuit. So that can be the sort of the Midland circuits, the Southeastern circuits, etc. In all the London interviews, it was quite tense and quite serious. That obviously you get London sets that aren't like that, but as a whole, that's how I found my experience. And on the regions, they were much more relaxed, and they were much more welcoming and much more friendly. That was my personal experience. So it depends on the set. It really does. No two panels is going to have the same sort of feel. Some you'll feel welcome and relaxed very quickly, and some will keep you on your feet for the entire length you're in their building.
Okay, that's quite interesting to know as well. I think there is a recurring theme that in London you are kind of with the height of the best barristers. So I guess that there's going to be a bit more pressure in that sense. I can understand that, but yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for that. Also, just another question. Can you compare an interview process that you had for a normal job that was quite similar to the pupillage interview, or are they on 2 different dimensions?
Unfortunately, they're on 2
They are.
different dimensions. I mean, the thing is that for a normal job interview, you don't have 2 rounds that would preceded a horrific paper application asking, you know, what personality traits you have that make you think you'd be a good barrister, or, you know, there's even more bizarre questions out there on the gateway, like really, really bizarre questions. But
Can you
they're
answer,
just,
if you don't mind? Sorry to trauma like trigger you.
no, of course.
But can you give us 3 things that you said that
Yeah.
you think is crucial to becoming a barrister, interpersonal skills that you just mentioned there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the first thing that in terms of interpersonal skills that every barrister needs and everyone on their application will put, but you actually need evidence for it, is resilience. And that's right at the top of the list. Anything you can gain in your life experiences, work experiences, personal life, whatever, to show that you are resilient rather than just saying it. Because the reality is no one goes through the pupillage application process if they aren't resilient or if they aren't determined, because let's face it, the odds of success are so unbelievably low that you wouldn't subject yourself to that unless if you actually want it. So you need to show that you're a resilient person.
Just I'm really sorry to interrupt there, but just
Yeah, no, of course.
back to where you touched on that really like heartfelt, that really tragic situation, but really heartfelt response that you know your dad passed away. Really sorry to hear that as well. What advice would you give to people who want to mention maybe a personal story that they've gone through in life? Do you think that's frowned upon in the world of at the bar, or do you quite encourage that if they want to show resilience through something that is really tragically happened in their life, whether it be some trauma, whether it be something that they've gone through? Would you actually encourage people to speak about that if they can relate it back to a relevant point, obviously?
Yeah, that's probably my biggest hot take. I'd say 100% mention it.
Mhm.
Don't try and seek sympathy for it, but if you can use it as evidence and show where you are on why you are who you are today
Yeah.
with something like that. I think it's the best evidence you can possibly give,
Mm,
those lived experiences, and it's something normally that is completely unique to you. There's not
yeah.
going to be a lot of applicants that have that specific story. They're going to have a mini pupillage at X set, or they're going to have this qualification, the BPC that everyone does. But it's those little unique things about you that I really think that make you stand out to chambers. So I'd say 100% do it tactfully. Don't just sort of trauma dump, then start crying, and then have a moment. It's not a counselling session, but
That would be taught me.
yeah.
I'd be like,
But
and I got called Elwood multiple times and I don't even have blonde hair, right?
yeah, exactly. But
That's
you
not
know,
a problem.
mention it tactfully and use it
Yeah.
to your advantage. 100%.
No, that's really, really interesting to hear. Thank you. Because I think sometimes there is a recurring theme within the world of the criminal bar, especially. You know, barristers are these people who are very straightforward looking, straight people, don't really have much conversation, don't really have much banter, will really judge upon you. They've had the most perfect painted life. And sometimes I think people get really worried about actually expressing something that they've gone through, which is quite niche and may not have been the nuclear family upbringing and that type of thing. And I
Exactly.
think people sometimes get a bit nervous about maybe expressing that. I know I do, certainly, in case you kind of get judged and in case you aren't
100%.
that
Yeah.
standard perfect barrister, you know?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. But
Yeah,
yeah, do it.
definitely
Yeah.
mention it. Just go for it. So, let's talk about the last part. This is the last pupillage question then. So, your first and your second six, what
Yeah.
are you expecting? Can you tell us what it's going to be like on the ground running from what you know so far?
Yeah. I mean, so obviously the first 6 months you do a lot of following, a lot of note taking, a lot of practice advocacy. You do part 2 of your ethics exam. Obviously, you do part 1 on the bar course, which everyone who does the bar course will know how much fun that professional ethics course is. So part 2 is the same but worse. Um, and yeah, it's a lot of following around and learning the art of the trade and a lot of practice hearings. The
So they
second
won't throw
six,
you in straight away.
no, well,
Okay.
hopefully not. I mean, they can't if they don't want the BSB to come after them.
Yeah.
So, um, and then my understanding, certainly within criminal sets, is that when you first get your provisional practicing certificate, which you do at the start of the second six of pupillage, you prosecute a lot of magistrates' court like lists. So you just go there, the CPS will give you a list, and you prosecute everyone on the list. So a lot of magistrates' court work, and then the lower Crown Court things. So maybe like Crown Court trials for lower offences, you know, like a low
Okay.
level theft, or Crown Court mentions, Crown Court sentencing for low level offences, and then you sort of build your way up the ladder slowly until you finish your pupillage, and then as the years go by, you get, you know, trusted with more important cases until you all of a sudden are a junior on a murder, and then you can sort of
Nice.
have a little
And
fist
I bet
bump in
that
the
jump
air.
is still just as a harsh a jump as becoming a barrister, is jumping from being a
Well,
barrister to a junior on a murder.
yeah. I mean, obviously, getting
Mm.
your foot in the door is the hardest thing statistically, but the hardest thing physically is probably, you know, keep going, keep building
Well,
up the
yeah,
ladder.
it's yeah, keep swimming, keep swimming. So let's move to the bar now, really briefly, because I know that I'm conscious of the time. I don't want to keep you, Louis, for the rest of your evening, but I know we've got a lot of bar course people or
Yeah,
bar
absolutely.
course people on here, so I think it's really imperative that we touch on that. So a bit of a critical feedback question: what did you expect on the bar course that you got on the bar course, and what did you not expect on the bar course which you got on the bar course?
Yeah, okay. So what I expected, to be completely honest, was a lot of very, very pretentious people. The kind
Mm-hmm.
of people that I thought would be barristers, you know, loud, obnoxious, etc. I didn't find that at all. I
Okay.
found out of my class of 18, probably 2 people who were like that. And now 3 or 4 of them are some of my best friends in the entire world. So that was such a pleasant surprise to me. And there is so many people like you going for this. I think that's a really nice thing.
Yeah, it's
Um,
amazing.
so I'd
Everyone's
say
in
if you're
boat.
worried about people, you know, judging you because you've got a bit of an accent, or, you know, you come from a different background, there's no legal people in your family, it doesn't matter. Literally, when you go there, there'll be people from every. I was shocked in such a pleasant way about the diversity of backgrounds and the diversity of thought. It was brilliant. So
That's
yeah, I'd say
amazing.
that was something really excellent about the bar course.
Okay.
I did it. I mean, I can't speak for every provider, but certainly at the University of Law, yeah, their admin department's absolutely terrible, but the people there were great, and so the tutors. So
That's amazing. And what did you not expect which you got on the bar course?
What
whether
did
it
I?
be a level of work or an area that you just thought, or maybe the cross examination, you actually thought you were going to be fantastic at it, and then you got the shock of your life.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. That's part. You just hit the nail on the head. That is the thing.
Yeah,
Everyone thinks that you see it on TV. You're like, oh my God, I could do that. I get the gotcha moment. I will crush that witness. But no, you are so bad, and your tutor will just sit there and go leading,
yeah.
leading, leading when you're not
Oh
meant to be
no, so
leading.
it's really like the TV scenarios that you see. So your tutor will kind of like do the objection for you and tell you that you are leading.
Yeah, I mean
Right.
they play the judge, sort of when you're doing civil advocacy or if you're doing criminal advocacy. So, but the thing is that you make lots of mistakes. But the thing is, it's such a welcoming environment. Like I was very very nervous when I started. Massively introverted. I never mooted before I did the bar course. Literally never mooted. The last time I mooted would have been the first time I mooted would have been last year. So a lot can change when you start that bar course. But all the tutors and everyone on the course is so encouraging and so supportive. It's not what you'd expect, highly competitive, cutthroat, pupillage places are low, but I did not find that sort of nature to be in the bar course at all.
That's really helpful. And also, just about the mooting, what you've just said there, that's really interesting to know as well, because I actually got told by a barrister last week, because I've only done one moot and I've done one negotiation competition at university level. And I was really panicking, thinking I've got not an ounce of oral advocacy in terms of like the stringent law oral advocacy. What do I do, and they said you don't have to do mooting if you don't want to do it. It doesn't make you become a barrister. You do an incredible lot of mooting without even realizing it on the bar course anyway.
Yeah.
It would be writing submissions and doing written advocacy versus the oral advocacy. So I think that's just quite an interesting point that I certainly want to raise for everybody on today. If you haven't done mooting like me, don't worry about it. Find oral advocacy and other things, probably in niche ways. And I think Louis would be able to answer this question. Training contracts and solicitors firms and chambers and pupillage probably want to see you be able to pull out the niche qualities that you found in regular everyday jobs. Like you said, you find a lot of skills and talents that you'll have in regular jobs, but it's just about unpicking them and finding them.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, let's take you for example. You started a podcast. Like, what an easy way to evidence oral advocacy. I'm speaking online to 15, 20 people live. X amount of people record. It's small things like that stack up. I mean, at the University of Law, I was sitting on the academic board as the student sort of. Well, I wasn't actually elected. It was all a bit undemocratic, but I sat on the academic board as the student representation, and I got to speak to all of the executives of the university, voice my opinions. That was a great thing to put for advocacy. So yeah,
Wow.
it doesn't just need to be mooting. And having said that, you can do a lot of mooting in a year if you really want to get it up.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Right. What advice would you give to somebody who thinks they're not intelligent enough to do the bar or not intelligent enough to become a solicitor?
Yeah, well, it's almost the wrong question, right? 100%, you can't be not intelligent enough to do the bar course. The thing about the bar course is, yeah, it helps if you're intelligent, but the hard work, like the bar course is all about hard work. Hard work will trump intelligence 100% of the time. Everyone I saw who got a high distinction on the bar course really, really worked. They studied, they did what they needed to do. And quite frankly, the people who I always saw in class not doing their reading, not preparing, they did worse. Some of them failed it multiple times just because they didn't work. I'm sure they were smart enough, but they didn't work. So the thing about it is to stay on top of your reading, and you're just going to have to put the hours in. You're just going to have to do the work, and you're just going to have to find ways to do the work for you. Um, I don't like saying that people aren't intelligent enough to do the bar course, because I genuinely think anybody can do law. It's about finding the way that it works for you to sort of learn it and be willing to actually put in the effort when other people don't want to.
Thank you very much. And last thing, why do you think you're going to be an amazing barrister? What personality traits do you think that you've
Oh,
got that you're going to be the smashing barrister?
that does sound like a pupilish interview question.
Sorry.
No,
We're going everyone's trauma here. I apologise. We're going to
no,
answer
that's
questions in the box in a second, which will be less pupillage. So
no, no, absolutely. For things, one I'd say is that I've got a lot of attention to detail, like to the point where I've probably got some sign of undiagnosed OCD. I can't let typos go. I can't let things go like that. So I think that hyper attention to detail will be very helpful when reading pages of e-bundles at 2 in the morning when I've just got the bundle. Second thing, obviously resilience. I probably link back to the sort of tragic thing I had at the start of my life. So I've got a why behind everything I'm doing, which I think is really important. If you don't know what your why is, try and figure it out, because
And I
that
think
makes everything a lot easier.
I can imagine. I think I speak on behalf of everybody just to thank you very much for sharing that with us. That really personal experience. I do really, really appreciate that. And yeah, thank you very much for telling us that
No,
tragic.
absolutely. I only like to mention it just because it gives people a better understanding of my background and sort of the kind of person I am. So that's two things. Third thing, I say I can communicate with a lot of different people. I can use that. I can adapt my language to the sort of audience. I can, use simple language so people can understand it, and I tend to explain things, as basically as possible, which
Yeah,
I certainly like. I believe strongly in access for justice for everybody, so I think that helps a lot. And
absolutely.
the final thing I'd say, which certainly moots when I've been going against sort of perhaps more generic candidates, is that I've been told I'm very disarming. I can take sort of, an aggressive charge, an aggressive person, and sort of disarm the situation. People I play rugby with would probably not say the same thing, but we won't talk to them. We'll talk to the legal professionals. So
Yeah.
we'll say, yeah, I'm quite a disarming person. I can get people to put their guns down, so to speak.
Right, fantastic. So, to answer your question, honey, I apologise if I've just pronounced your name incorrectly there, but yes, of course, you can turn your mic on. I'm just going to read out a couple of the questions above first, just in case people need to hop off. So I'll just ask the first one up here, which was from Elishba. How do you answer the question why crime and not family in a way that would not offend a family practitioner or make you seem like you can't handle family law? That's a good question.
Okay, it's a good question, a very specific question,
Yeah, I like
which
that.
is good. Which is good. It's good to be specific. So I'm presuming this is with the intention that you're applying to a mixed set for a crime pupillage. That's what I'm guessing anyway. How to not offend a family practitioner. Well, I mean, I don't think it would offend them to openly say that the emotional strain of family for you is not what you want in your day-to-day practicing life. It's really important to be honest with these people. Nothing worse than getting a pupillage, then you start it, and all of a sudden you're exposed to something you don't want to be exposed to on a daily basis. I certainly know when I did the pro bono course when I was in family court, I found it much more difficult than I thought
Mm,
it would
mm.
be. So I say just there's no one way to answer the question, but obviously don't slag off family law. Go, family law is rubbish. I don't want to do it, But I would say, I find the emotional strain different and harder in a way that I don't find crime. And I think a lot of family
Mm,
practitioners will understand that and have, empathy for that. And
mm.
why crime? You've got a million things you can say that crime's great. It depends on your CV. If you've got work experience or like specific study experience, always link that.
Yeah,
Mine sort of
cross reference as well. So if you've had you, so I'm going to do it with family law. I'm going to say I couldn't stand family law, cried my eyes out in a court case, as a court clerk, embarrassing. But no, I'm not going to obviously say that I cried in an active live case. But I will actually say that I got really welled up because it actually then shows chambers how dedicated you are to doing the one that you're applying for. Because if not, they're going to ask the question. Well, how do you know you want to be a criminal barrister? Have you even looked at other areas of law? So yeah, actually cross reference the experience you've got. Do you agree, Libby, on that one?
yeah, 100% cross reference. And my one tip for anyone who's doing a pupillage interview or any interview for that matter is back whatever you're saying up with evidence in the same sentence or in the next sentence. It's very rare that anyone likes a claim to be unevidenced. Like you
Yeah.
can't just say something and then not follow up with, well, I did this or because of this. Like evidence everything you say. And like why crime and not family, just it's fine you think that and don't want to offend them. I just say make sure you give evidence for that.
Yeah. I feel like we're in a trial here.
I
So
know, yeah.
do you think that chambers look, so this is from Honey, do you think that chambers look at two people differently if one has a scholarship and one doesn't? I will just say, for my opinion here, and I'm Louis is the best person to ask, but I will just say, when I've been looking at chambers, I have looked at what candidates they take as pupil barristers. So if it's people who've got, 5 different scholarships, then I've been like, oh, okay. Not that it's put me off, but I've just been a little bit more aware. But I don't think that there's an actual strong answer from that, from what I'm gauging from the barristers I've communicated with. I don't think there's a strong answer that if you haven't got a scholarship, you're not getting in. I don't think it's like that. But again, I'm speaking on the North Eastern Circuit, so which is Newcastle, Leeds, Manchester. Sorry, Newcastle, Teesside, and then you've got the Northern Circuit. Yeah, Louis, what would you say to that?
I think, like you say, it depends on the chambers. Certain very prestigious chambers will only accept certain candidates. They will go as far as to say, you know, we're accepting applications from everyone. You know, we encourage from X backgrounds, but you look at their pupils and they're all from Oxbridge.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
will it?
You will get told that as well, won't you? Really, as a student aspiring a barrister, you will get told to just be mindful to check chambers' websites before applying.
I think the thing to say, the advice I was given by Anna Williams from the ULaw Employability Department, who is amazing. If you go to ULaw, please speak to her before you do anything to do with pupillage. She is an absolute saint. Is that the getting an in-of-court scholarship is a very nice rubber stamp of approval from a set of barristers that you have what it takes to become a barrister.
Yeah.
So chambers do like it a lot for that reason. You know, you have got that rubber stamp of approval. So if you have got a scholarship, it's definitely like a +1 on your application. Like there's no point lying about that. But can you get pupillage without a scholarship? Absolutely. Loads of people do. It's not something that should hold you back. But equally, if you've got a scholarship, like it will help 100%. Yeah.
And also as well, be mindful, guys, to apply for bar scholarships within your university or within your providers, because, you know, 9 times out of 10, your lecturers are barristers, practicing barristers, as Louis said, and they will actually, you know, that goes as a good certificate as well. That a panel of barristers and lecturers have decided to give you the application, so the scholarship.
And just to put another spin on it, let's say you don't get a scholarship application, you can't afford the bar course fees, you end up having to work for the fees, you save up and pay the fees yourself. I mean, even talking about that makes me feel good. Like I didn't do it, but like look at that for like an answer to an interview question, but like that's resilience. Like people might be like, I'm determined, I'm resilient, but did you, you know, work in a cafe for 2 years, work in a cafe near for 2 years because you wanted to do this so badly? Like,
absolutely. Next question, Jack. How important would you say it is to have your own USP with regard to pupillage applications?
It's the most important part, 100%, because they read hundreds of applications. Like even small chambers get like 200 applications.
Sorry, mindful. Just for anybody who doesn't know what a USP is, Louis, would you mind just clarifying that for?
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking USP to mean unique selling point, so something that, you know, makes you stand out as a candidate, as opposed to other candidates, more generic candidates. So I'd say even the smallish chambers get, you know, hundreds of applications, and everyone's got the base thing, right? They've got a law degree or a GDL and the bar course and mini pupillages. That's pretty much set amongst everybody, and some level of mooting. It will vary from sort of national champion to sort of at the mooting society. So everyone's got that, and the thing they're looking for is that little spark, that little X factor. Like some chambers, as I said, want the very generic. I got 90% on all my modules and I'm from Oxbridge. Great, cool. You know, absolutely, we're going to have those. That's absolutely fine. They worked hard for that. But for all of us other people, we really do need to put what makes us, or we at least think makes us special and different, or what we can bring them. Look for your outside activities, bring them in. Rugby is a big thing for me, so I brought that into the applications. I saw that as a strength. If you've got a trauma or a tragedy that you think makes a big thing about you, 100% bring that in. You just want to bring all those little bits of your life that you want them to see and put them in there. There's nothing worse than like a boring application. Like you want it to be evidence-based and have all the things it needs to have, but then there's that little bit of you in there. It should read differently, 100%.
And I think that ties into the question that you asked Jessica, and that's why I'm not going to ask it. It's just, well, I'll brief over it quickly. It's just basically saying, Louis, just do the chambers care if you get, you know, the occasional competent in certain modules compared to the very competent? And I think that just ties back into the previous answer that Louis gave, that, you know, some chambers will be looking for outstanding and very competent, and some won't. I think do your research. Again, Louis, if you want to touch on the question, you can. But I think you've answered, I mean, go ahead.
100%. I'd agree with you. Do your research. I mean, like some chambers, as Ellie says, like those super duper prestigious ones, and you look at all their pupils and it's all a bit of the same. Yeah, they're going to look for that, and they, in a sense, have a right to look for that. But you don't want to be there anyway, you know.
No. Unless
So
that's your
yeah,
personality, then go ahead.
yeah. Well,
You want-
unless if that's your reality, go ahead. But
yeah, I agree.
yeah, it won't hold you back. 100%. Don't let it get in your head. It won't hold you back.
Jessica also asks a really great question. How did you balance preparing for pupillage interviews alongside completing the BTC?
Ah, now that's a fun question. No, I certainly, Jessica, if you're going through this at the moment, I have sympathy for you, because this is exactly what I did last year. It's difficult, especially because I had way more interviews than I thought I would have. Genuinely, I would have been over the moon with one interview, and all of a sudden I had 6 first rounds in 2 weeks, and I was absolutely shitting it, to be honest.
Yeah, I can.
Having never done a pupillage interview before, and I was just trying to sap knowledge from other people, and then I almost lost myself in it, and that's really important not to do. Too many cooks
Yeah.
can spoil the soup, so
I
to
was going to
speak.
say another thing as well. Yeah, don't send your application to every single living barrister on the world, because on the planet, because then they start putting their own twists into it. It's not you anymore. So I did read that on LinkedIn the other day. I think that's a really useful point to mention. Louis just said it anyways. Too many cooks will ruin the soup.
Yeah, absolutely. So actual practical tips to prepare for pupillage. When you're going to the set, obviously make sure you arrive early. Look at their website beforehand. Look at the junior pupils on their websites. Look at the kind of work they're doing. If they've been on any named cases, have a little look. See what their sort of background is as well. It's good to just have a sense and feel of chambers, who they're looking for, and what sort of work that they're doing. So I found that really helpful. Go over those really easy answers. You know, why do you want to become a barrister? Why do this set? Why on the region? Why in the city? Just make sure you've really rehearsed what you're going to say to the panel, because you're going to be nervous. Particularly if you've only got one interview, you're going to be really nervous because you know a lot rides on it. It's nice if you have multiple interviews, because the first one in a way is a throwaway interview. You can get used to the process. So do that easy prep work, do your research beforehand. And to be honest, a lot of the preparation isn't preparation in a sense, it's just preparing yourself, because you're going to show yourself off. That's what you're doing. It's a chance to prove yourself. They're not scrutinizing you. It's sort of your chance to shine, and you need to see it that way. And the biggest thing I see people, certainly my mates, let them down, is that in interview they were completely different to how they are with me when we go out for a coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
Nerves completely take over. And I just totally sympathise with this. My scholarship interview was beyond tragic. If I was a defendant, I would have convicted myself 2 times, 10 times over. My biggest tip, to be honest, is to practice speaking to a camera like I'm doing now, to sort of project your voice, even if you're nervous, because it sort of tricks your brain, and just be confident in who you are and how you've got there. That I'm so sure that went such a long way in sort of getting pupillage. That confidence my family's distilled in me, and everything, my sort of experiences, that is it. Competence is confidence as well as your
Yeah.
experience. So just, I'd say, outside of all the prep, don't worry too much. You've got a bar course to pass, that's important too. Make sure you know obviously what Chambers is about, but just you got to back yourself to the hill. Absolutely. Be rehearsed and back yourself to the hill.
Be your number one fan for sure, and that's in. I
Yeah.
think that's in everything in life. If you go into an interview, just be your number one fan. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses. Hone on the strengths. Yes, Honey. Do you want to? Honey, sorry. Would you? I apologise, I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Do you want to turn your microphone off and then ask the question?
Hi guys.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you. It's nice to speak to you both. And sorry if you can hear my dogs. I've got 2 French bulldogs sitting next to me.
No.
So I'm from Swansea in Wales, obviously by the accent. I've got 2 mini pupilages in Swansea, but obviously I know that chambers value mini pupils who can demonstrate a genuine connection to their set. So obviously I get evidence that I study in Swansea and I'm from Swansea. But the culture in Swansea compared to London is obviously worlds apart. So I feel like there's challenges in terms of adapting and fitting in. So from someone coming from such a different social culture, is there any advice that you can give on not just mini pupillage, but anything, applying for anything in London, how to like adapt to different like etiquette, avoid feeling like an outsider, or just like to present yourself in a way that aligns with expectations of London chambers?
I think that's a fantastic question, actually. Can I go on this one, Louis, first, if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
With me being from Middlesbrough, Teesside, I went to Essex, which was a 5.5 hour journey away from where I live. Left all of my families and friends, and I was like, I'm going to Essex to be on Towie. Got to Essex, got the shock of my life, realised I wasn't going to be on the only way as Essex, and that I was actually at a university town city, Colchester, which, if anyone knows where that is in down south, is absolutely, no offense, diabolical. So I got a real shock of my life, and I realized I wasn't going to be like walking around with a fluffy chihuahua. But I had the exact same fear and feeling. How on earth am I? And I actually got 5 mini pupilages in London, and I couldn't believe it, because I thought, I was so shocked, because I thought, oh my goodness. And I'll be honest with you guys, like I said at the start of this session, I didn't know the difference between a barrister and a solicitor. So I started all of this panic rush applying in second year. The literal last couple of months of term, in say July time, I applied to every chambers that really resonated with me. And do you know what? I think it goes back to exactly what's been the recurring theme throughout the whole session. Don't lose yourself. Go there, be completely yourself, be completely true to yourself. In fact, if anything, I think it's a breath of fresh air when barristers actually see a new diverse person in a new accent. They all love an accent in London, by the way, I must say. Even the judges have told me that. And I judge marshal with 3 circuit judges in London. One was two were both senior residents of the Crown Court that I went to, and they were as humble and lovely as they came. So down to earth, so friendly, and so open to seeing the bar become more diverse. So don't be frightened that you're coming into something that, yeah, of course, you will get barristers. And I will tell you about one experience. I went to shake his hand, and he looked at me as if I'd just came out of a subway or something. He looked at me like a real piece of dirt, and I did get a little bit upset over it. I didn't cry or anything, but I did feel a little bit knocked. I felt a little bit embarrassed, but you just rise on from it and you think, well, that's just a problem with you. That might just be a personality problem with you, or you might have just had a really bad day and your case might not be going very well. So if you do get any experiences, which I hope you won't, don't take it so personal neither, and certainly don't tie it back to the type of person that you think that you are. Don't categorize or stereotype yourself. I did that. It doesn't get you anywhere. In fact, it just hinders you growing and flourishing more, in my opinion, because then you flourish too late. Not too late, but you flourish at the end when you should have been flourishing all the way through. So I think it just goes back to saying, believe in yourself. And London isn't all that bad. It really isn't. And in fact, yeah, like I say, I think that they're like the breath of fresh air. I think, in fact, London barristers probably like it more when the mini pupils come in and just want to resonate with them on a down to earth basis. Because some of the mini pupils that they do get that are from London want to come in and tell them how to run the case, which I think is incredibly disrespectful for your first meet. I wouldn't encourage do that unless they ask you for your opinion. But yeah, I have heard some horror stories where some pupils have gone in and said to the barristers, you need to do this, and it hasn't gone down very well. So just be yourself. That's my advice anyway.
That's really helpful, thank you. You're
most welcome. And also, may I just add, I've got lip filler. It might sound really random, but that terrified me. And I got a comment at one of my one of the Inns of Courts dinners about my lips from a male barrister who was very old, and I just thought, oh, whatever, you're just obviously jealous. No, I didn't think that might. Yeah, again, don't change yourself. Of course, I'm going to tone things down. So, for example, I won't get my lips done the week before pupillage interviews. I just wouldn't do that. But that's not because I'm trying to be a certain person. But yeah, I think sometimes you overthink things like that if you come from a bit of a diverse background. Don't, just be yourself.
Thank you.
Louis, anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I would have given much the same advice. Like, there's no point trying to change your accent. There's no point trying to change who you are. Honestly, it's so much effort to try and fit in, so to speak. So I'd say just...
Yeah, absolutely. Even me being from the north as well, I haven't got that prominent north accent anymore. And it's not because I've changed an accent. It's just because I've learned how to speak properly, which you do anyway when you're in a legal environment. And that's all you need, is to be able to actually explain yourself properly to a judge or a jury or your client, obviously most importantly your client. So as long as you just know how to speak properly,
that, you know what, you just hit the nail on the head, because there was a few people on my bar course who were difficult to understand at times when they're doing advocacy, and it's not because of their accent, it's because they weren't projecting, and it's because they weren't speaking slowly and clearly. And everyone can do that. It doesn't matter what you sound or look like. So I'd say, like, if anything, try and slow your speech down, and you know, you always speak quicker than you think you're speaking. But you know, that's not changing who you are. That's just changing the pace and sound of the pace and pitch of your voice.
And yeah, connect with them. Make sure that your mini pupillage week is not a waste. So the barrister I've got coming on in 3 barristers I've got coming on the podcast in March and April. I met all 3 of them on my mini pupil. I mini pupilled with them, and I've made some amazing connections. I've still got, you know, one of the judges that I judge marshalled with. I've still got his WhatsApp number. And you know, I hope that he will be also coming on the podcast at some point. So yeah, just actually try and make the connection whilst you're there as well. That's what it's all about.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Right, final question before we release Louis of his duties. What types of things can I do during my first year to start building up experiences that will help me make a good application to bar school? I think that's fantastic question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first thing, you're thinking about bar school in
Well
first
done.
year.
Yeah,
So well done. You're about 3 years ahead of the others. So that's a great start. I'd say the biggest thing, that my biggest regret from my undergraduate was not exposing myself to extracurricular law activities earlier. And I certainly paid the price in having to catch up very quickly in my bar year. So if you want the bar year to be a bit more relaxed and to go in with a bit more experience, a bit more confidence, expose yourself to those extracurricular activities. And the funniest thing is you'll realize they're not as scary as you think they are. Before my first move, I was absolutely bricking it. I thought it was the most terrifying thing ever. It's not. And actually, it's quite fun. And the more you do, the more you think it's more fun. And you develop different tactics, different styles, and you actually enjoy your moment of speaking. So expose yourself to those extracurriculars, do the moots, do the competitions. You never know where it goes. You might earn some money from some of the essay competitions if you know, half decent at writing essays. So yeah, expose yourself to those extracurricular activities, and it will show such dedication to the profession when you reach this stage. Yes, start early with those extracurriculars.
Shout out to Jordan Aditiba, who's actually on the call tonight. Me and him nearly got through to the last round of the negotiation competition, where we would have gone to Brazil. So you can get out with things as well. But unfortunately, we got beat by some pretentious little rascal. But let me not say no more. Get into trouble. But yeah, so yeah, absolutely throw yourself into it. Have fun, and do the societies as well, because I think that dedication and what's the word, commitment actually is quite good as well to the to showing an application at a bar school. If you can show that you delegated your time correctly and appropriately, it looks good.
100%. I was just gonna, this is completely random, but quickly, I was gonna add it to a question I answered earlier about balancing bar course with pupillage interview prep. And I just had an epiphany that actually sometimes it's not about the bar course or pupillage interview prep, and you actually need to do something to make sure you don't go absolutely mentally up the wall. You know, sort of in this time period, I religiously played rugby, religiously went to the gym. Like, don't change those basic things that make you feel good about who you are and yourself, whatever it is. If it's getting your hair done, if it's whatever, like, keep doing those little things that give you that boost and actually feeling yourself. 100%, don't lose sight of that when you're going through that period.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you very much, Louis. Yeah, pretentious little rascal. I'm using that line. Yeah, that's a good line to use, because it's not saying anything bad. It's no swear words or anything. You know, it's just saying just facts, really, just spitting facts. Right. So thank you ever so much, Louis. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody here. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Also, everybody who's joined on, I can't thank you enough neither. I set up this podcast to try and help aspiring lawyers, and it's just really really amazing and comforting when I see everybody join on. It makes me feel really happy that there's so many people trying to come to the bar as well, and keep dreaming, keep pursuing your dream, because it will one day become a reality. And Louis is living proof.
No, thank you for having me. It's been an incredible experience. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you ever so much, and best of luck. We can't wait to see you walking around with your wig and your gown.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Louis. Good night.
Cheers.
And good night, everybody. Have a nice evening.
Take care. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.